Hello, and welcome to the Esri Agriculture webinar series. Today, we'll be presenting on the topic of Imagery in ArcGIS for Agriculture. My name is Charlie Magruder, and I'm the Agriculture Lead on the Natural Resources team here at Esri. I'm joined today by colleagues Elvis Takau of Esri, also Brent Slone of LifeScale Analytics, Peter Becker of the Esri Image Products team, and Cody Binkelman, an Esri Technical Product Manager. Our presenters today will cover the use of imagery in agriculture. Among the imagery uses we'll see today is visualization and analysis from sources like satellites, planes, and drones. Using commercial off-the-shelf apps too for ArcGIS, which will consume and enrich your use of imagery. And also processing your own imagery from drones and integration with your GIS and other types of advanced analytics. Again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. First off, I'd like to introduce Brent Slone of LifeScale Analytics. Brent is a longtime ArcGIS user working in the predominantly environmental and agricultural use cases. Brent heard our call to order a few years ago and volunteered to help us bridge the gap between our agriculture users and Esri by leading the Esri Ag User Group. Brent?
Thank you, Charlie, and welcome everyone. A quick overview of the Esri Agriculture User Group. This group is formed and exists to benefit our user community and to work with Esri to drive our business needs from the technology side. In addition to current trends, we will explore new technology and what it means to the ag community. Our goal is to drive business value through events like this webinar. We're especially excited today to see the content from today's webinar, since imagery can be such a key part of agricultural analysis. This user group is not just for GIS professionals. Please encourage others in your ag community to join the group. Through member growth, we can expand our collective knowledge. Though we've only been in existence for a few short years, we've been able to grow quite quickly. As of this week, we have over 675 members in our LinkedIn group. We also want to leverage user feedback to help steer our direction and focus the group. Finally, make sure you visit our Ag User Group LinkedIn page found on this site. Back to you, Charlie.
Thank you, Brent. Here's what we know. Ultimately, agriculture is about minimizing risk. Some factors are beyond our control, while others are not. But the agriculture industry has always been about the laws of supply and demand. Listed here are many of the major factors that our clients tell us about. Some are things that they have control over, but many are out of their control. What can growers control? Well, they can control things like management practices, which lies within their means. These things include what to plant, when to plant, what inputs to apply, where to plant, and so on. Our challenge is to elevate data from observations, such as imagery and field observations, into actionable tasks and knowledge that inform management practices to address that risk. The National Geographic Society says by 2050, we'll need to feed 2 billion more people on this planet for a total of 9 billion persons. That's staggering. How the agriculture industry will address this challenge is a multi-pronged answer. Through great strides, though great strides have been made in plant genetics in the past 20 years, the industry has seen some stagnation in the past few. Frankly, the most promising way to address these challenges is beyond genetics. It's commonly thought that through the use of technology and improved management practices that we can address this. The technology that Esri offers to address it in agriculture is that of the ArcGIS platform. There are 9 patterns of the GIS pattern use that we've uncovered with clients, but for our time today, we want to just focus on 4 aspects of that. The first being data stewardship or data management. We're talking about data creation and management of all core GIS systems. I've always said that data is the fuel that drives the engine called GIS. Data science segment, or analytics, is the analysis of data sets that you've created and managed. Plus, from other data sources. We live in a time that there's no lacking of information that you have access to, whether it's your proprietary data, collected data, open source sources, industry-specific, social, weather, and so on. Information is abundant, so better ag management is in your hands. The distribution of all that raw and stylized data is handled through data sharing or mobility. It's the distribution of that outputted analysis, as well as real-time collected data and sharing of that intelligence in your organization with trusted partners that will shorten the decision-making process. Sharing spatial data is the equivalent of what the spreadsheet did for organizational accounting. And finally in this, decision-making or decision support is really the fruit of the data stewardship, data science, and data sharing intelligence labor. These fruits, and yes, that pun is intended, of your labor lead to better, faster, smarter decisions. We've seen time and time again that clients do find areas of improvement by using GIS. So we're gathered here today to focus on imagery segment of GIS in agriculture. I want to share with you areas in which we see again and again clients using imagery in their workflows. At its core, imagery can be used to represent farming facilities or farming areas as a baseline map showing operations. Even organizations that have no data always start with an aerial image and map out their initial collected data. Additionally, find clients that use multispectral analysis to create management zones for crops, and then thus using it for applications of herbicides and or pesticides. Another theme in which we've seen high growth in is the use of current imagery for crop health checks. Customers use current imagery to locate stressed areas, then maybe send out crews to review the potential affected areas. The fourth area, which we see a lot, is performing an in-season analysis of crop conditions. Maybe during drought conditions or excessive rain or any other condition, use of imagery can help you plan for your future and make potential change in your operational season. At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Peter Becker. As I mentioned before, he'll be joined by Elvis and Cody for this section. Many of you may be familiar with Peter. He's a leader of our Imagery Products Group, and you may have seen him present at the Esri UC on many occasions. Peter and the guys will be covering many aspects of imagery for agriculture. Peter?
Thank you, Charlie. So the topics I'm going to cover are about access to imagery, something about the different sources that are available to you, different types of applications that can be used specifically for agriculture, then talk a little bit about processing of drone imagery, and then how do we actually scale that up into the enterprise. First, let's actually look at some of the concerns about using imagery in agriculture, or rather the variables that exist. One of them is cost. Imagery in agriculture can be free in imagery like Landsat, or it can be extremely expensive, but still possibly very valuable. The uses of the imagery can vary from just pure visual interpretation to very complex analysis. The resolution of the imagery varies. Some imagery, or like weather information, may only be 1 kilometer in resolution, and we can get imagery all the way down to 1 centimeter from drones. The extent that you require or that is available may be the whole Earth, or it may only be a single plot. Then there are the temporal aspects. You may need imagery only every 3 years, for example, the NAPE imagery, or you may have demands for imagery that is daily. The number of bands of the imagery may just be natural color RGB imagery, or it may extend all the way to hyperspectral imagery. How you access that imagery also varies. It may just be a service that you can consume, or it may be imagery that you need to actually manage in your own environments. And if you have a service, that service may also be varied. It may just be a tile cache or a service purely for visualization, or it may be a service that you can, as an image service, that you can actually do not only visualization, but also do analysis on. And then you have to consider the apps. What are you looking for? From very easy to use apps all the way to advanced desktop applications. So there are a lot of variables that need to be considered. The first thing I want to do is just actually show one single simple app with a single source, and that's actually the Landsat Explorer. This is an application that anybody can go to. It's free to use. This first screen just tells you a little bit about Landsat, its uses, the aspect that it's multispectral and temporal, and then it actually integrates a viewer directly into the web application. It also, at the bottom, links to the Landsat Explorer. And if we go to this app, this is a simple web app, which actually has a lot of powerful capabilities. It provides access to Landsat imagery covering the whole Earth, updated every day, with about 700 new scenes are added to this service every single day. And we can go to an area. I'm just going to zoom into Salinas in California, and we get the imagery. You can see the imagery is from about the 29th of March in this particular case, and we can start looking at different aspects. Here we're looking at an agricultural band combination, but I could say I'd like to have color infrared, or I'd like to have, let's say, a moisture index, or I'd like to have a vegetation index. Every time I actually selected one of those buttons, what's actually happening is my client is making a request to a server. The server is accessing the imagery. There's actually nearly a petabyte of Landsat imagery there. It's identifying the pixels, on the fly processing them, and transmitting only the results back to me. So I don't need to manage any of the data. I just consume a simple to use service. Now, here we're seeing agricultural data, but let's say I want to actually do some simple form of analysis. In other words, how much data do I have, or how much area has an NDVI over a particular value? And for that, I can simply turn on the mask function. This will actually, behind the scenes, compute the NDVI and provide a threshold. So now I can select all my areas, or define, let's say I'm interested in the areas of these fields, and apply, and basically it's identified all the fields and the area of those fields which have an NDVI over a particular value. So I can do some simple analysis like that. But the data is also temporal. It's not only one point in time, it's actually lots of points in time. So the last imagery here is from the 29th of March, but I can actually go through time and see how the images have changed. I can do that visually. Alternatively, I can actually just pick a point. And what this is actually doing is actually queried through time, and we're getting this graph, and we can see here that on the 16th of December, there was basically the vegetation index was very low, and basically at another date, the vegetation has gone basically back up. And if we want to do a comparison, if I want to, for example, compare the vegetation between these two dates, I can save this as one date. Let's pick the latest image as the second date, and then actually ask the system to do a change detection. This is actually in green showing all the areas where vegetation has increased, and in red, the areas where they have decreased. And similarly, I can actually, if I want to quantify that in some way, I can actually define the masks and set the thresholds and get the values. So as you can see, this is a very simple to use application accessing massive volumes of imagery that anybody can actually can use. You can also add your own data. So I'm just going to log into ArcGIS. I'm just going to look for, I have some information on fields. Here are my fields. I can add this field information, and let's turn the change detection off. And you'll see these are fields that I basically have in my ArcGIS Online account. So, as with a simple application, but what we need to look at are all the different data sources. There are many sources. From terrain, Landsat, Sentinel. These are data sets that are available within ArcGIS Online and the Living Atlas. And then there are also other data sets from various partners. And then we have to consider the different applications, everything from an online map viewer to configurable templates, web app builder, runtime, custom applications from partners, desktop. So there are lots of options in both of them. And what I want to do is to talk a little bit through some of those. First, I want to talk about ArcGIS Online. So ArcGIS Online really is a collaborative web GIS. It provides software and content as a service. You can get it as a subscription, or it comes if you actually purchase ArcGIS Pro, you will get ArcGIS Online there. It gives access to the living atlas of the world, and I'll be showing you some of those data sets. It allows you to access content that has been shared to you, and allows you to actually create and share maps, scenes, applications, layers, analytics, and data. And it is actually the basis of what we call web maps, which allow you to define the layers and properties which are important for and the basis of applications. So let me just quickly show, here is ArcGIS Online. In my simple web map viewer, and what we can do, for example, is change out the imagery. So here I'm actually looking at high resolution. This is the world imagery base map. This is imagery that's kept up to date, relatively up to date, but comes down to literally meter resolution, sub-meter resolution imagery in various areas. And if I wanted to add additional data, I can easily go to the Living Atlas, type, for example, Landsat. So here is the Landsat multispectral data, add that, and I immediately have access to Landsat data. And in a similar way, I can actually add a lot of other data sets. So let's actually look at those different data sets that are available. One is world imagery. This actually comes from many contributors. As I mentioned, it's about 2.5 meter resolution global. The majority of the area is 1 meter, and there are some areas which go down to even higher resolutions. But it's really just natural color and as a base map. Other one is terrain. Terrain actually is a global digital elevation model, which can be used not only for visualization, but analysis. It has various functions such as returning slope and aspect. Then there is the nape imagery. This covers the contiguous United States and goes down to about 50 centimeter resolution in some areas, but is updated every approximately 3 years, and it provides 4-band imagery, including things like color infrared and NDVI. Then we have the Landsat that I was just showing. That's global, has 8 bands, is updated for every area approximately every 16 days, assuming it's cloud-free. And currently there's over nearly a petabyte of that data available. What we're going to be releasing soon is Sentinel-2. Sentinel-2 will be a very similar service to the Landsat services. And again, all these are available directly for inside subscriptions of ArcGIS Online. So you can just, if you have ArcGIS Online, you can directly access these services. And the Sentinel service should be made available next month. So those are from the Living Atlas, but we also have a lot of data sets available from partners. So Esri works with a number of data partners that provide various types of imagery, and very often those are services that you can subscribe to or download the data. One of them is WDT. They provide weather information on literally an hourly basis, things like precipitation and temperature. There is DEMOS. DEMOS Imaging provide satellite imagery from their DEMOS satellites as well as some other satellites, and you can get that as a subscription as well as download the data, and that provides resolutions from about 10 to 20 meters, and that's actually updated in agricultural areas about every 2 to 3 days, assuming that it's when cloud free, and they have an application called Canvas that you can subscribe to. Another one is Planet. Many of you know Planet. They have Dove satellites as well as Rapid Eye. They actually provide satellite imagery to resolutions about 3 to 4 meters from the Dove satellites, although they can actually go down to about 80 centimeters with the SkySat satellites, and that's typically providing 4-band imagery, although the Rapid Eye also provides red edge. Those are what's interesting about the Planet imagery at the moment is it's actually updated daily when cloud free. So that's a great source of data. Another one is Digital Globe. Digital Globe are focusing more on the higher resolution satellites, going down to 30 centimeters, but also have superspectral satellites, so the number of bands is significantly increased. And then you actually have aerial data service providers. These are companies like Aeroptic, and they typically have aerial sensors and actually fly do custom flights. So you define your area of interest, and these service providers will come and actually fly your area of interest, very often with an aerial sensor, sometimes with drone sensors, and they can get down to sort of 3 centimeter resolution, very often also at least four band imagery. So there are many other partners as well. I just wanted to sort of show these because I'll be showing some examples. There's also drone services. So if you have your own drones, you may want to upload your data to a drone service, which will actually process the data. Alternatively, you can actually process your own drone imagery, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So if we go back to my web maps, what we have here's a web map that I created before, and what we've actually done is added lots of these different data sources that I've been talking about. They've basically been added to my web map, and I can access, for example, if I wanted the NDVI imagery, I get my NDVI imagery. So these are just multiple layers that I've added in a similar way as before. So then we have to basically look at the different viewers. One is the map viewer. In this, you can add your own data, and it actually also includes analysis tools. So these analysis tools can do various things. I will be showing you a couple of those. You can also create services. It allows you to actually share that content and actually also provide the access control. In other words, control who has access to what. So actually, let's have a look at that. So here is my web map, and I've got lots of these different images. I could, for example, let's turn on I'll be showing lots of these in a minute. I was just looking for my NAPE imagery as a start. So I can see here's my NAPE imagery. Here I have a number of field boundaries that I've defined. And let's say I have a farm and I'm interested in where the runoff from that farm might go. I can actually click the analysis, go find points, go downstream trace, and I'm just going to give a name. And let's define the location of a couple of farms. Let's say a location here, and a location here. And I'm going to run this analysis, put a different name in it. And what this is actually going to do is to use that little terrain model and actually perform an analysis to identify these different data sets. So if I wanted to actually look at the terrain model, let's actually go to let's turn the NAPE off and turn the terrain hill shade. So this is the global digital terrain model of showing hill shade. I could, for example, ask for slope maps, aspect maps, and these are all different types of maps that I can quickly access from my services. So this process is still running in the background. So we'll come back to the process in a minute, and hopefully we'll see where those fields come to. So actually there it's just finished. So let me just turn off my boundaries, and you can see here is basically the downstream trace from my farms where the water would go if, for example, there was a spillage. So let's talk about different applications. There are lots of applications you can use. One is just configurable applications. These are very simple to configure. We're actually making available next week 2 new configurable applications specifically for imagery called the Imagery Viewer and the Image Mask applications. They'll be actually available next week. These are simple applications you can configure. I'll show you how to do those. You can also make more advanced applications using Web App Builder. So Web App Builder provides a framework and a whole load of widgets, and you can just plug those widgets in without any programming. You can just plug the widgets you want into applications and customize those applications to your requirements. Alternatively, if you are more a developer, you can actually go and add your own widgets and further extend them. And those are actually, when you see applications like the Landsat Explorer, those are actually built out of extending Web App Builder. Other ones are agricultural applications, specifically from partners. So we have a number of partners that actually build on top of the platform and build applications, specific and customized applications. So you may want to just speak with some of those partners and obtain solutions from them. The fourth is ArcGIS Desktop. ArcGIS Desktop, especially ArcGIS Pro, is a very advanced GIS and has a lot of image processing applications, image processing abilities. So I'd also recommend you definitely look, if you want to go into more advanced image processing or analysis, definitely look into ArcGIS Pro. So let's actually have a look at some of these templates. Here is my web map that I have, and what I can then do is just to share, and I can define who I'm going to share my web map with, but I can also directly define I want to create an application, and it gives me lots of different configuration templates. In this case, I'm just going to search for imagery. And I'm just going to pick this template. This is the one that we are going to be releasing next week. And what this actually allows us to do now is literally configure an application. So this is going to come up with a configuration pane, and I'll be able to configure this application to my specific requirements. So this is just loading the maps. Let me just log in. And what we can then do is to look at various options, and there are various panels here that we can reconfigure how exactly this application is. Once we've done this application, it becomes an item within our ArcGIS Online, and then I actually get it as an application. So this is actually the application that I have. And what I wanted to do is to use this application to actually show some of this different imagery. So as before, you can see it's using the same web map as the basis, but now I have some simple tools which allow me to review the different data sets. So I'm looking at the natural color imagery, but I could also look at, for example, the Landsat imagery. Let's say I'm interested in, let's say, the vegetation index. I can look at that, and if I want to see how the vegetation index has changed over time, I can actually just enable this image selector and literally go through time, select any time that I want that's available, and see the vegetation index at that particular point in time. So that's, for example, Landsat. Similar, I can go to Sentinel imagery. You'll see, so this is, we'll bring up Sentinel imagery, and this is actually higher resolution. So the Sentinel imagery is down to about 10 meter in natural color, but you can also access a lot of the other spectral bands. So this is a shortwave infrared version of it. You can see the dates. The last time Sentinel went over this area was about the 26th of March. If we go to another data set, here is a service of Demos imagery, similar multispectral imagery that we can access directly as a service. Going to a little higher resolution, and this is actually a service of, zoom in a little bit, this is a service of planet imagery. So this is planet imagery covering this area. What's interesting again is these are services. The actual imagery, the unprocessed imagery is actually sitting in a cloud environment. And as I pan and zoom around, the system is actually auto-rectifying this imagery. And again, I can use this to access the temporal aspects of the imagery. So here I can go through time. And I can see that there are various dates here. So I can see that, say, the latest image was from the 29th. So we can sort of go through and have a look at these times. So these are services which can be set up, which actually update themselves, update themselves every day. So they can be set up in cloud environments, and then every day as new imagery becomes available, you can get access to it. And then let's say I want the if I want false color imagery, I can get that directly. Let's go even higher resolution. Let's look into digital globe imagery. Here we're going down to 30 centimeter resolution imagery. So it's much higher resolution. For more precision agricultural applications, we're getting down to very high resolutions. And not only does this have the RGB aspect, we can also go into, for example, the 8-band imagery and start utilizing those additional bands to identify different trends and different aspects of agriculture. So those are high resolution images. We have some bookmarks here, so I can go to different locations. What I can also do is to define new areas. So here I have some farms that I'm looking at, and let's actually just change the imagery. I'm going to just go back to my NAPE imagery for a second. So here, let's say some farms. Let's say I have a new farm that I want to edit the boundary of. I can just say, okay, here's a new farm. I'm going to define this as a new farm. I'm going to give it an ID, 555. And I've just created a new farm in this application. So this is a simple application, allows me to access my imagery, review it in different ways. What I want to then do is to actually go to another application. This one is actually similar. It's based on the same web maps, but this is actually built with Web App Builder. And so here we have with Web App Builder, you'll notice that the system, although it's a new app, that polygon that I drew is already entered into the system. So it's using the same data source. It's just stored in ArcGIS Online as a data source. And then we can have the similar capabilities of looking through different layers, accessing my different band combinations. If I wanted to, for example, do NDVI of planets, so this is my planet NDVI. I'm seeing these as values, but what this application allows me to do is to actually get those statistics. So what I'm going to actually do is define an area. I say I want to actually compute statistics of that. And what it's actually doing is going back and actually getting from the planet imagery, it's updating the NDVI values. And now if I actually click on it, you will see the actual NDVI value has actually been extracted from that service in the cloud and added to my field. So now I've actually attributed my field. And if I go to my web map, find it, too many things here. I can't find it. Okay. In my web map, it would basically be updated as well. So that's just showing you different simple imagery templates as well as app builders. The other one is ArcGIS Pro. So ArcGIS Pro is really a full-featured GIS as well as very powerful image processing capabilities. It allows you to load imagery, local imagery, so nearly all image formats are supported. You can also load those same web maps that you're using in web applications can be loaded into Pro. Some of the image processing includes things like auto-rectification of the imagery. So if you have more raw imagery and you want to auto-rectify it, Pro includes those capabilities. And then a lot of very advanced image processing capabilities that you can chain together to apply any type of image processing that you want to apply to the imagery. You can apply it directly in Pro. And Pro can actually be used as used to publish data to online or to ArcGIS Enterprise. For example, you may be doing some work in Pro and you actually want to go into Collector. So let's actually go into Pro for a second. And here I am in Pro. I'm accessing the same data sets, the same layers that we had before. And let's actually go to a bookmark. I'm going to go to bookmark here. And what I'm seeing here is actually microsense data. So it's data captured from microsense 5-band on drone imagery. And we can look at this imagery and do various types of analysis. So I'm looking at this imagery and I'm identifying that maybe there is something wrong here. You can see this is sort of an NDVI, and I can see that there are some patches that maybe I need to actually go have scouted. Somebody needs to go into the field and actually check what is going on in these areas. So what I can do is I can go to my edit and say I want to create some features here. Click on my zones. Let me just turn the zones on for a second. And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to basically say that there is an area here that I'm concerned about and actually wants checked up. So what I've done is in Pro, I've just drawn that polygon. I could have drawn that same polygon in a web application. I've just drawn that polygon. Now what we want to do is to go and find out, let's go to the field and see what's going on there. So what I want to do is to hand it over to Elvis, and Elvis is going to go into the field and find out what's going on. Over to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm immediately going to head out into the field and begin to analyze the areas of concern that Peter has addressed. So honestly, all our management decisions start with an understanding of what's going on out in the field. And as such, you need to actually try to pinpoint your scouting efforts so that you can take some quick action and correct the problems that are essential to actually mitigating your yield-threatening issues. So knowing precisely where to scout will enable growers, agronomists, or even ag consultants to determine exactly where and when inputs need to be applied. So I'm going to launch Collector, which is one of many mobile applications we have for field and data collection, as well as managing of work out in the field. So Peter's just notified me about scouting some areas of interest. So by launching Collector, I can immediately start to address those problems. Now I know he shared this map with a group that I belong to called Agriculture, so I can go ahead and immediately launch that group. So my attention is immediately brought to his area of interest. So I can actually zoom in here and start to pick up the area that Peter has outlined for me. And we can see that area pretty clearly because he's marked it off as a boundary. So that's the area that I actually am concerned with right now. And I'm going to actually collect an observation at that particular area. So I'm going to go ahead and collect a point at that area. We're going to call that crop scouting actually. And we can adjust the severity. For now, it's just an area of concern. So we're just going to watch that area. And then we're also going to take some notes and we'll just say there's some crop and weed management in that particular area. Enter that information. Let's go ahead and just pick up our date, which is today. And in the field, sometimes you need some visual evidence. So if I needed to actually collect a picture, I could actually go ahead and take a picture, or in this case, I'm going to choose one that already exists within my phone here. So I've just saved that, and I'm going to immediately submit that to Peter. So it's going to take a second here just to submit that picture, and I should be prompted with another view of my map. But just for more observation, I notice another area here that's a little bit concerning for me. Peter didn't mark out that area, but I'm going to go ahead and actually collect at that location as well, just so that we could take a closer look at it back in the office. So I'm going to designate that as a spot spray. But in many cases, this may simply be crop scouting in your particular industry. So again, I can take some details, maybe some notes on that area and say crop management over there. Yeah, let's just leave it at that. And we're going to hit done here. And I'd actually like to mark that area off. So I'm going to just put a little boundary around that particular area, just so Peter can check on that area later. And again, I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And that should be done. And so it's pretty simple. With Collector, I can actually go out to areas of poorer crop health and determine what the challenges are and if any decisions need to be made about those particular areas. So Collector helps us to actually make some infill decisions that can immediately be analyzed back in the office. So I'm going to hand it back over to Peter, and he should have received those updates almost instantaneously. Peter, right back to you.
Very good. So I'm back in Pro, and what I want to do is just turn on this crop farm scouting information, and I can see now this this detail defined by Elvis. And if I click on this point, I basically see the conditions that he identified, also the actual JPEG image that he transmitted to me. Basically, is coming back, so I have basically access to that imagery. And the zone information should also update in a second. Actually, no, it's already there. You can see this other information that's here, so I can get that information as well. So I'm basically getting access to the information that Elvis has been selected. And now what I can do is carry on doing my analysis, looking at not only the the NDVI data, but start looking at some of the other for example, the multispectral data, and carry on my analysis. So ArcGIS Pro has fantastic capabilities, but what we've recently done is extended it with the Image Analyst extension. And the Image Analyst extension furthers what you can do with ArcGIS Pro by providing enriched visualization capabilities and agile geospatial analytics. What that means is that we can, within ArcGIS Pro, do things like advanced image analysis, classification, machine learning. Those applications are all actually built into ArcGIS Pro with the Image Analyst extension, as well as visualizations such as stereo display and image space analysis, which allows us to really look at images in their native and unprojected form. So Pro has a lot of capabilities, and those are just really available. And if you just go to Imagery and you have the data available, you can see here, for example, the classification wizards and tools, which can then be used to go through and actually perform classification of the imagery to identify areas of additional work. So with that, what I'd like to do is to actually hand over to Cody, because very often what I've shown you is a lot of imagery, but we know that a lot of you actually have your own drones and want to process those drones as well. So over to you, Cody.
All right, thank you, Peter. What I'd like to do is talk very briefly about drone to map. With the dramatic increase of drone usage, growers and crop consultants, et cetera, are now taking control of their own image acquisition. And so drone to map is a standalone application for processing single frame imagery to bring your own drone imagery into ArcGIS. And the emphasis with drone to map is really to focus on ease of use. The products created by drone to map include ortho-rectified mosaics and digital surface models in what we refer to as the 2D workflow. And for those who need to build 3D products, we can create 3D point clouds and textured mesh models. Of particular interest to the agricultural community is support for multispectral sensors, such as from MicaSense, Sequoia, Tetracam, Centera, and others. With a multispectral camera, drone to map does also create an NDVI image. Now note, drone to map does not require the ArcGIS desktop software, but comes with a subscription to ArcGIS Online and provides a simple method for publishing and sharing data. And other than the creation of the NDVI, I would not typically portray drone to map as an analytical tool. So for deeper analysis, I would want to bring the imagery into ArcGIS Pro. At this point, let me switch over to drone to map and just show what it takes to set up a project. When you first open the application, you see this interface to choose your workflow. The rapid workflow is typically run out in the field just to make sure you haven't missed any of your site of interest. But I'm going to create a two-dimensional mapping project. And all I need to do is give the software a name for the project and then direct the software for where to find the imagery. In this case, I'm using the MicaSense sample that Peter and Elvis were looking at earlier. And you'll see as long as the GPS data is there within the images, this is all I need to do to set up a project and begin processing within drone to map. If I change the base map, we can focus just on the imagery, and we can look at any of the individual images, and you can see I've got the individual spectral bands from that multispectral sensor. And normally I would encourage a user to go into the manage ground control points before processing. But in this case, for sake of time, what I'm going to do is just open my existing project. So this is what the project would look like after processing within drone to map. And in addition to this, in this case, this is a true color rendition. It did also generate that NDVI color map that you had seen previously. And once again, if you want to do any detailed analysis beyond the simple visualization of the NDVI, I would use this button to open the project in ArcGIS Pro. and that would take me to this interface. So this is the ArcGIS Pro software that Peter has shown. And in this case, you'll see all the components of the Drone to Map project, including that NDVI color rendition. And if I turn off the imagery, the image points, we can also get at the quantitative values of the NDVI if you'd like to apply your own threshold and your own color map within ArcGIS Pro. I'd also mention the ability to quickly publish the data. So if I do want to share this imagery with colleagues or the public, I can use this tile layer button, and this will immediately publish my imagery into ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. So this would include the hillshade, the NDVI color map, and or the ortho mosaic, whichever I choose. And if I go to my group in ArcGIS Online, this is the agriculture group that we've set up for today's webinar. And this is what the tile cache would appear, how it would appear if I was to publish that raster tile cache of the NDVI within ArcGIS Online. So those are just a very few quick overview points of Drone to Map, and we can certainly discuss that in the future if you'd like to hear more about Drone to Map. But let me make one quick point about bringing drone imagery into ArcGIS Pro. For those who already have ArcGIS Pro, if you have the advanced license, we can actually do the drone processing in what we refer to as the ortho mapping workflow. And then you can feed your products directly into the analytical tools. These will be available in a server-based version coming mid-year. But the most important point I'd like to make about ArcGIS Pro is that it provides the platform for doing the data management that is behind the scenes, behind everything that Peter has been showing, to quickly access a large volume of imagery. And if you're doing a lot of drone projects, you will very definitely want to use ArcGIS Pro to do your data management. So those are just a few quick points. I'd like to turn it back over to Peter, and he can continue.
Thank you, Cody. So as Cody was mentioning, what you really want to be doing is, if you have large numbers of images and projects, use ArcGIS Pro to manage those. And that's really a key capability of ArcGIS, is really scaling to the enterprise and being able to handle very large numbers of projects. These projects can be from satellite imagery, aerial imagery, drone imagery, but also other type of rasters that you may have. And these implementations can be done either on-premise or in the cloud. So all the example data that I was actually showing today, all the data, including the microsense data, none of that was actually on my computer. It's all actually been sitting in various cloud infrastructures, either typically Amazon or Azure, and we're then just accessing these as services. And the ability to set up those services and then serve them out is something that we do ourselves in things like the Landsat and Sentinel services, but it's also done by a number of our partners. For example, Digital Globe, they also provide services to serve image services that can be used in this type of analysis without you needing to actually manage the data. If you do get the data, mind you, you can download it and put it into and manage it in ArcGIS Pro. And the way we do that is something called a Mosaic dataset. A Mosaic dataset is actually an Optimun data model for managing and processing imagery. It allows us to define references to large numbers of images and define with those references how the images to be processed. And then as the images is processed, either in a desktop environment or in the server environment, the server actually performs that processing. And that's the way to actually ensure that the volumes of data do not go out of control, because the server is actually processing the raw data on the fly as you access the data. And that significantly reduces the time between acquisition and exploitation, which is critical, for example, in not only agriculture applications, but in things like emergency response. And it reduces the data management because it's not duplicating a lot of the data, and obviously is much, much quicker. So when you have the Mosaic datasets, what you can then do is you can serve those through ArcGIS Image Server, and ArcGIS Image Server really provides the processing and analysis for these massive image collections. There are actually three capabilities of Image Server. One is the dynamic image services, which is what I've been showing you today. Pan and zoom around, and the server is actually performing the processing. as a client application, I can transmit to the server, please compute an NDVI or apply the following function, and the server performs the processing and only returns the results back to the client application. So you have actually full access to the pixels. Another capability is raster analytics. Raster analytics is a way to create persistent products. So if you want to have a product created, for example, a mask of vegetation indices every day over a whole country, you can use raster analytics, and what that will do is it will actually massively scale by performing the processing on multiple computers simultaneously and consolidating those results and returning that as a web application. Also coming in July is actually author mapping as a new capability of the image server. That's actually going to allow you to upload, if you have ArcGIS image server running in your enterprise or in the cloud, you can then upload your drone imagery to that, and it'll process it to create, let's say, author images and terrain models, and those are then part of your enterprise implementation. So what we've been showing today is really ArcGIS as a platform, but a comprehensive platform for imagery, agricultural imagery. And there are really four key components of it. One is the system of record. This is the aspect as a data manager where you have your imagery and you want to manage and process that imagery. That may be satellite imagery, aerial imagery, or drone imagery, and or it may be so that sort of imagery, and you want to manage that, and that's really part of the data stewardship component as well. Then there's a system of insight, which is how to extract information from imagery. Hopefully we'll give another webinar to the agricultural community on more focused on the image analysis capabilities, but really focuses on the data science aspect of extracting information. And then there is a system of engagement, which is really about things like the web applications that I've been showing. These are simple applications that allow large numbers of users to very quickly interact and quickly make decisions based on the information and products that you've actually served to them. So basically it's about data sharing and decision making. And fourth is the actual content coming from ArcGIS Online as part of the Living Atlas, content from a number of different partners, as well as content from within your organization. So all these come together to provide a complete platform. And this scales from individual users to large enterprises. And with that, I'd like to hand you back to Charlie.
Thanks, Peter. Again, and to Elvis and to Cody. We appreciate that those details. That was a wealth of information, but I think it's also right on point with where our customers and clients in agriculture are looking for information and data. We've shared quite a bit of information with you today. There are many great resources to further educate yourself and educate your team about imagery for agriculture and ArcGIS on the Esri website. The three primary areas that come to mind are online ArcGIS resources or help files. Also training. Esri has in-person and online training classes and webinars and seminars, lots of different resources that. And then our blog section is can't miss too for any subject matter in those. All these things have resources that include how-to videos, white papers, getting started documents. There's even ebooks out there, the ArcGIS imagery book and the Imagery and GIS Best Practices by Cass Green is another one. And I will leave this screen up here. I know it's a little busy. I realize it's a little busy, but we'll leave it up here in the event that you want to do a screen capture so that you can get access to some of these resources right away. As I mentioned in the beginning though, this video will be shared with you in the coming week, and we want to make sure that you all get pointers to all the things that we've covered here. So so these are things that we talked about today are referenced as well. But don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager if you have additional questions. So I'll leave that up there for just another second and get your cameras out, take that picture. Okay. The technology that Esri offers is that of the ArcGIS platform that you just saw. I started our presentation telling you that I wanted to focus on 4 segments of GIS. They were data stewardship, data science, data sharing, and decision making. We've shown you today our rich, free imagery that is a part of the Living Atlas. No stewardship is really needed for those resources, but it's highly available for supplementing and enriching your data and use case, and it's available today. We've also shown you data science tools that can be easily consumed out of the box. We've also told you about advanced tools that can be deployed throughout our rich API and web app builder tool sets, and again, available today. Third, data sharing was shown to be as easy to do with web maps and consumption through COTS applications like Collector or Explorer, and even more. The distribution of data and data sharing or mobility and the analysis output is key to field collection and even more data creation, leading to more sharing with the right people in your organization or trusted partners. And the next was decision making, the collective process of building, managing, analyzing, sharing, and disseminating your key data leads to better farm management and better crop production for what you're doing. Lastly, imagery is a very important part of GIS. In my opening, I mentioned that data is the fuel for the engine called GIS, and we certainly have seen that imagery is fuel as well. Like something Peter said just recently there about ArcGIS, it's a system of record, a system of engagement, and a system of insight. So this ends our presentation for this webinar. As I mentioned, we've only scratched the surface of how imagery can be used in ArcGIS, and we hope to do more webinars on subjects that interest to you. Now's the time for your questions. If you have additional questions, you're welcome to enter them in the chat window in the GoToWebinar client. At this time, we'll get started with answering some of them. I'm taking some of them that were highly asked, and so we'll see about as they say, killing multiple birds with one stone. So the first question I have is probably for Elvis. What does it take to set up ArcGIS Collector to see that data?
Thank you, Charlie. That's a great question, and it's a pretty linear process actually to prepare and share data that's going to be used in Collector. You actually start by preparing and sharing that data via ArcGIS Desktop. So you simply start by creating what we call a data model, which involves actually defining the look of your data, and then you ultimately publish your data model as a layer. Then the next steps involve really creating what we a web map, which is the basis for a lot of our applications moving forward. And that includes setting up the data collection form and making the map available to the other people within your organizations. So in many cases, you can simply use an existing template. We have a lot of existing templates in ArcGIS Online, and just edit those templates that actually fit your precise needs. And we have, in addition to some of the points I just made, we have a lot of resources online that we can share at the end of this to get you started. But in a nutshell, that's how you would get started with Collector.
Thank you. Well, I think the next question kind of leads right into that too, and they asked, is the crop monitoring app a part of Esri software? And actually in the screen where I had you do a snapshot, there are some resources listed there. We have built some templates for Survey 123 and for Web Map Builder that allow you to kind of get a jump start on getting started with some of these things. Those obviously are always customizable by you, but it's a way of at least getting things started so you have access to getting going with what you want to do. Let's see, the next question is, do I need ArcGIS Desktop and an extension to use Drone to Map? And we'll go back to Cody on that one since he's the one that dealt with that.
All right, thank you, Charlie. I'm glad we want to clarify this. You definitely do not need ArcGIS Desktop or any extension for Drone to Map. So for small operators, all you need is Drone to Map itself, and that does provide a subscription to ArcGIS Online if you want to do the publishing. There are some features of drone to map, for example, the ability to make measurements within the application. There are some functions that are only accessible if you do have ArcGIS Pro installed on the same system. But our intent was to make it very lightweight so you can take drone to map out into the field. So you do not need ArcGIS to run drone to map.
All right, thank you. Another question, do I need the Image Analyst extension on desktop if I'm using ArcGIS Online imagery tools? Peter, can you address that? That was sort of in the wheelhouse what you were working on there.
ArcGIS Online is actually in a way separate, and that when you use ArcGIS Online, you're actually connecting to servers that actually perform the processing, and that doesn't require desktop in any way unless you actually want to author advanced analysis tools, and you can basically author those tools and then transmit them to the server. Alternatively, you can then just use ArcGIS Desktop on its own. That has a lot of capabilities for image processing directly in ArcGIS Pro, even at the basic level. If you to do the data management, you need the standard level. And if you really want to do more advanced analysis to do, for example, classification, that's when you need the extension, either the Image Analyst extension or the Spatial Analyst extension. They both provide those capabilities to do sort of classification of imagery.
All right, thank you. This one, and our time obviously is ended, but we'll be answering a few more questions here. So again, it'll all be recorded and you can come back to this if you need to drop off, but we'll answer a few more here. And this one, I'll say collectively to the team with me, is it possible to clip the images of interest, example, Landsat or Sentinel, to the area of interest and show only that on the fly instead of the whole image for the globe?
Yes, you can in an application. An application can actually just transmit an additional boundary to the server. The server will then clip the image and return only that part of the image. So in part of the demo I showed you, when I was actually doing the mask, I actually drew a polygon and it was clipped. That is actually what was going on. Most of the applications don't do that, but there's no simple tool to do it. In Pro, it's actually very easy. You can just draw have a layer, just draw a feature, and just use the clip tool, and it'll clip that layer to that image. And that clipping is not actually going to clip the image; it's only defining a function so that image now gets clipped when it's accessed. So yes, it can easily be done.
Okay, fantastic. And again, another one that may be for, we'll determine who wants this one. It says, we're using version 10.6 and we own and operate animal feed sites across our state. Can we use the layers shown here a while back and allow users to trace downstream travel of water or runoff in this version 10.6?
So yes, you don't actually, those analysis tools that I showed you, those were actually part of ArcGIS Online. So you can actually just go into ArcGIS Online and run them. So you don't even need ArcGIS Desktop to do that. Those same tools, mind you, are also available on ArcGIS in Desktop, both in Pro and ArcMap, by connecting actually to ArcGIS Online and running the analysis there. So you can run the analysis either from Desktop or ArcGIS Online using the data that's in ArcGIS Online. Alternatively, if you want to do it at a much higher resolution or you have your own data sets, that's where you can actually use ArcGIS to manage your own elevation data, and then use actually part of the Spatial Analyst extension has those hydro tools. If you have large volumes of your own data, you can actually also use ArcGIS Server. If you have large amounts of image data, you can actually load that imagery into the image server, and then as part of raster analytics, it has a whole lot of hydro tools which will perform that analysis on massive data sets by spreading the load over multiple servers if necessary. So that can be used for example, hydro conditioning of data sets. There's some processing that's very often required to prepare elevation data to be hydro conditioned.
Fantastic. And one more question. Can I use MODIS satellite images with ArcGIS?
Yes, just go to ArcGIS Online in the Living Atlas, type MODIS, and they will be directly available. So we actually cascade some services from NASA, which you can directly access the MODIS data. Alternatively, if you download the MODIS data, you can also load that into ArcGIS desktop. So yes.
Great. Once again, I want to thank my co-presenters. I want to thank the people who attended. This does end our event. Thank you and have a great day.